Living with Art, 13th edition, Part 3, Chapter 9, Camera and Computer Arts. Chapter outline: Photography, Film and Video, New Media, and the Internet. Photography. The camera obscura was a precursor of photography. The camera obscura was a precursor of photography. Camera obscura in Latin literally means dark room. You can make a camera obscura yourself. Find a light-tight room, or even a closet, or a very large cardboard box. Pierce a small hole, no bigger than the diameter of a pencil, in one wall of the room to admit light. Inside, hold a sheet of white paper a few inches from the hole. You will see an image of the scene outside the room projected on the paper, upside down, rather blurry but recognizable. With the development of lenses during the 16th century, the camera obscura could be made to focus the image it projected. Artists of the time, concerned with making optically convincing representations through perspective and modeling with light and shadow, welcomed this improved camera obscura as a drawing tool. The illustration here appeared in the book called The Great Art of Light and Shadow, published in 1646. It depicts an elaborate version of a portable camera obscura. Note the poles on the ground for carrying it. The roof and the fourth wall have been left out of the illustration to allow us to peer inside. Each of the four outer walls had a lens at its center. Two lenses are shown here at the left and right. Entering through a trap door in the floor, marked F, the artist stood at the inner chamber made of four translucent paper screens. The man here is drawn in miniature. The chamber was not quite so large. Each lens projected its view onto the corresponding sheet, and the artist traced the projections from the other side. It was none other than Leonardo da Vinci who first suggested this arrangement. Photography. Daguerreotype was an early photographic process to capture images made by light passing through an aperture. An example of a daguerreotype is shown here, and it's an early photographic process which captures an image made by light passing through an aperture. Daguerre came up with a light-sensitive surface, which was a copper plate coated with silver iodine, and he named his invention daguerreotype. Daguerre made the image illustrated here in 1839, the year the French government announced his discovery to the world. In detail characteristic of daguerreotypes, it records a seemingly deserted boulevard in Paris. In fact, the boulevard was a bustling thoroughfare. To record the image, Daguerre's plate needed to be exposed to sunlight for 10 or 11 minutes. The only person to stand still long enough to be recorded was a man who had stopped to have his shoes shined. He and the partially obscured shoe shiner were among the first people ever to appear in a photograph, and the first to have their image taken without knowing it. Photography. Photography captures images made by light using specially coated glass, metal, or ladder paper. Despite the sophistication of modern photographic equipment, the basic mechanism of the camera is simple, and it is no different than the camera obscura. A camera is a light-tight box with an opening at one end to admit light, a lens to refract or redirect and focus the light, and a light-sensitive surface to receive the lighted image and hold it. The last of these, the holding of the image, was a major drawback of the camera obscura. It could project an image, but there was no way to preserve it, much less walk away with it in your hand. Photography. Daguerreotypes and tintypes produce positive images which cannot be reproduced. For all its early success, the daguerreotype was ultimately a blind alley for photography. The process results in a positive image, or an image in which light and dark values appear correctly. The image is unique and cannot be reproduced. The plate is the photograph. The photographic process, known as tintype or ferrotype, is similar. Discovered in 1853, the tintype produces a single positive image on a small sheet of iron. Less expensive and quicker than the daguerreotype because of a new light-sensitive coating, tintypes were particularly popular for portraits during the U.S. Civil War. The portrait of the unidentified young African-American soldier in Union uniform is just 3 inches tall. It is an example of a studio portrait taken indoors when a photographer removed a cap over the lens to allow light into the camera. The plate was then removed from the camera, subjected to a final chemical process to fix the image, hand-colored with gold and added to the buttons and placed in a case. Soldiers sent portraits like this to their families and carried them with them, the images of their loved ones that they received in return. Photography. Cyanotype captures silhouettes of objects laid on a specially coated paper and exposed to the sun, creating negative images. Just before the tintype process was invented, a wholly different way of making a photograph was discovered in England. This was called a cyanotype. The new process had color, and it was a photogram, meaning it did not require a camera. To make a cyanotype, photographers coated a sheet of paper with a light-sensitive solution rich in iron. Whatever was to be photographed was laid onto the paper and exposed to light. The light turned the paper a Parisian blue, with areas hit most by the light appearing the darkest. Whatever blocked the light was recorded in silhouette. This inversion of light and dark created a negative image. The sun did the work, which is why cyanotypes are sometimes called sunprints or photogenic drawings with light. Photography. Collodion negatives allowed for the reproduction of photographic images. Towards the middle of the 19th century, the collodion process was developed, which produced a negative on glass. This process began with a sticky liquid collodion poured onto a glass plate, which was then dipped in a light-sensitive silver nitrate. After exposure, the photographer used chemicals to develop the exposed image and to fix or make it permanent on the plate. The image remained in negative form on the glass, ready to be printed on paper, coated in silver and egg whites, using a projector known as an enlarger. Collodion improved exposure times, but not enough to capture action. U.S. Civil War photographer Timothy O'Sullivan created collodion images that have become part of the American cultural identity. Yet none pictures a battle underway. Instead, photographs such as A Harvest of Death, as seen here, document the quieter but still powerful moments before or after the fighting. A Harvest of Death was taken in the aftermath of the Battle of Gettysburg in July 1863, when more than 7,000 men died. The bodies spread across the landscape in O'Sullivan's photographs stand for the thousands more found nearby. The men seen standing on horseback in the background represent those charged with the grim task of burying the dead. English amateur photographer Julia Margaret Cameron's social circle included some of the most famous writers, artists, and intellectuals of her time, and she drew on her friendships to create memorable portraits of luminaries such as the naturalist Charles Darwin, the American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and Shakespearean actress Ellen Terry, and the poet Alfred Lord Tennyson. Some of Cameron's photographs portray her niece Julia Jackson, who would give birth to the writer Virginia Woolf. Photography. Photography, especially documentary photographs and photojournalism, are commonly understood as truthful. Photography, especially documentary photographs and photojournalism, are commonly understood as truthful. The passage of time can be seen in this photograph by Robert Capa. Capa was a photojournalist in World War II, documenting the fight for newspapers and magazines which published his pictures. On June 6, 1944, he boarded a landing craft and joined the first wave of U.S. forces storming the beach at Normandy in northern France. Omaha Beach, as the Allied commanders named the landing zone, was heavily fortified with German machining guns firing down on the soldiers. By the end of the invasion's first day, more than 2,000 Allied soldiers had died, many never making it onto dry land. Capa's fleeting scene of the D-Day invasion pictures oceans, soldiers, and defensive barriers. All appear blurry to us because of the chaos that reigned. The photographer's hand shook, the soldiers charged towards the beach, the ocean rose and fell. There was no opportunity to focus the camera lens or hold everything still as Kappa took the picture. Life was moving fast, and Kappa's photographs help us to feel the motion and the sense that the soldiers' fear and anxiety and adrenaline. The image also freezes time and halts motion to present a fraction of the frenzied moment in a single blurry frame. Photography. Photogravure is a printmaking process for reproducing photographic images. Straight photography faithfully captures the image seen through the viewfinder without manipulation. Photography has sometimes been excluded from art for its mechanical production. Another photographic process developed in the 19th century allowed photographs to be printed from metal plates. This is called photogravure. Photogravure is an intaglio technique, not unlike aquatint, but rather than reproduce the photographic image through the developing process onto a sensitized paper like an aluminum or platinum print, the image is etched onto a metal plate and printed on a press, such as we see in this image here. Photograve's characteristically broad tonal range is visible throughout this image entitled the steerage. The values shift from the white of the walkway to the darkest velvety black under the deck. If we had the opportunity to inspect the image with a magnifying glass, we would see the graininess of the powdered resin on the etched plate. Even from a distance, we see the soft edges characteristic of photogravure. But even with the soft edges, artist Stieglitz's photogravure is an example of pure or straight photography rather than pictorialism. Practitioners of straight photography considered it a point of honor not to crop or manipulate their photographs in any way. The composition is entirely visualized in advance, and then framed with a viewfinder, and then photographed and printed. With its emphasis on formal values and faithfulness to the essence of the medium, the aesthetics of straight photography would be enormously influential for decades to come. Photography. Kodak and Polaroid helped popularize amateur photography. The Polaroid company offered artists cameras and film in the 1960s to the 80s, encouraging them to explore the invention's creative potential. Photographer Barbara Crane created Maricopa County Fair using Polaroid's technology. The photograph is part of a series Crane devoted to the fair as she studied the American Southwest of the late 1970s. We see Polaroid's potential for intimacy in this picture as Crane captured the couple's quiet, intimate moment amid the fair's hustle and bustle. Crane opted to place the camera behind the couple and hold it nearest to her waist. As a result, we see just a fragment of their bodies and arms embrace. The couple is anonymous yet familiar. Crane's photograph displays a play of lines and shapes created by the arms and bodies. The deep blue sky echoes the blue in the man's shirt and jeans, just as the tanned arms match the orange pattern in the fabric. The blue and orange colors form a complementary harmony, and it makes the photograph bright and rich. The Polaroid company offered artists cameras and film in the 1960s and 80s, encouraging them to explore the invention's creative potential. Photographer Barbara Crane created Maricopa County Fair using Polaroid's technology. The photograph is part of a series Crane devoted to the fair as she studied the American Southwest in the late 1970s. We see Polaroid's potential for intimacy in this picture, as Crane captured the couple's quiet, intimate moment among the fair's hustle and bustle. Crane opted to place the camera behind the couple and to hold it near her waist. As a result, we see just a fragment of their bodies, arms in an embrace. The couple is anonymous yet familiar. Crane's photograph displays a play of lines and shapes created by the arms and bodies. The deep blue sky echoes the blue in the man's shirt and jeans, just as the tanned arms match the orange pattern of the fabric. The blue and orange colors form a complementary harmony that makes the photograph bright and rich. Kodak and Polaroid cameras opened up photography to amateurs and started it off as a popular hobby. Although professional photographers continued, and still do continue, to oversee the development and printing of their own work, they too have benefited from the portable lightweight technology. Almost anywhere a person could go, a camera could now go. Almost anything a person could see, a camera could record. Daily life became photographers' newest and perhaps most profound subject. It remains so even today in the age of digital photographs. Photography. Artists have taken photography as an object and as a subject for their art. Early in the 20th century, artists made photography itself part of the subject of their art, examining its role in society, the particular vision of the world it promotes, and the assumptions we make about it. One of the first artists, I should say, to look critically at a photograph was Hannah Höch. Born in 1889, Höch came of age during the decades when new printing techniques first allowed photographic images to appear in newspapers, magazines, posters, and advertising. Everyday life was suddenly flooded with images, and a constant flow of secondhand reality began to compete with direct experience. Höch's response was to use these found images as a new kind of raw material. In her photo montage, cut with a kitchen knife, she combines images and letters she had clipped from printed sources, changing their original meaning. Her repurposed photographs turn two wrestlers into the German Kaiser's mustache, put the head of the art critic on a baby's body, and have Albert Einstein tell us about the Dada art movement to which Höch belonged. Dada was formed in 1916 as a reaction to the unprecedented slaughter of World War I, which was then being fought. The word Dada itself has no meaning, for faced with the horror of mechanized killing and the corrupt societies that allowed it, Dada refused to make sense in traditional ways. A Dada manifesto written in 1918 called for an art which has been visibly shattered by the explosions of the last week, which is forever trying to collect its limbs after yesterday's crash. The best and most extraordinary artists will be those who every hour snatch the tatters of their bodies out of the fringes of this charactered life. Höch in her 1919 photo montage snatched bits and pieces from the frenzies of these images, providing us with a provocative collage of the world as she saw it. Beyond cutting up and reorganizing existing photographs as Höch had done, the mechanics of photography and the chemistry of the developing processes offer artists a nearly infinite range of creative possibilities. Sometimes a series of photographs is meant to be seen all together. Argentine artist Liliana Porter photographed a hand 3 times in white and exhibited all 3 prints together. For each photograph, Porter moved the hand onto a new position and changed its relationship to a line dividing the lower, darker background from the lighter upper area. As the hand moves into the white area, it appears that the developing trick matches the skin tone to the background, but Porter painted the fingers and eventually the hand. The 3 photographs formed part of Porter's larger exploration in this area of ambiguous space, shadows, lines, and surfaces, questioning what is real and what is illusion. Photography. Artists manipulate photographs for artistic effect and have examined photography's perceived truthfulness in their art. Artists manipulate photographs for artistic effect and have examined photography's perceived truthfulness in art. In this example, a photograph by Dwayne Michaels, you can see the ghostly image made of a choreographer's dancers with multiple exposures. After Michaels took the first photograph, he kept the film from moving forward in his camera, then took a second photograph with the group in just a slightly different pose, and as a result, we see each person twice in the final picture. Photography. Digital photography is produced with a camera, computer, and imaging software and can be manipulated. Digital photography is produced with a camera, computer, and imaging software which can then be manipulated. German photographer Loretta Lux used digital camera and imaging software to create this piece entitled Waiting Girl. Although the photograph at first appears like a simple family snapshot, Lux manipulated the simple image. She enlarged the girl's face, making her look slightly out of proportion as she stares at us with a blank expression. The light that falls on the cat and the girl is slightly different than the light that falls on the couch, revealing that this is a digital montage of photographs taken at different times and under different conditions. Yet, Lux's artistic intervention into the photograph also includes more traditional approaches. She selected the model, the setting, the costume, and the pale colors. She coached the girl on her expression, posed her with ankles crossed, and placed her asymmetrically on the couch. The photographer controlled the entire process. While photography is known for capturing a fleeting moment, Lux's The Waiting Girl freezes time in an uncanny and slightly disturbing picture of childhood. Artists also work with digital photographs taken by others. Just as Hannah Hoff used pictures published by newspapers, Mungo Thompson's Negative Space began with digital photographs taken by the Hubble Space Telescope and transmitted back to Earth. NASA makes these photographs available to the public online. Thompson took the NASA photographs and manipulated them on the computer. He created a negative image of the positive photograph, inverting the colors to make the stars appear black in the white space. He then cropped the view to a narrow rectangle and printed the 93-foot-long mural on vinyl. The inversion process resulted in a bright and engaging abstract image made by the click of a single button on imaging software, light years from the slow exposure of the first daguerreotypes, yet sharing its pioneering spirit. Film and video. Film creates the illusion of constant motion through persistence of vision. Throughout history, artists have tried to create the illusion of motion in still images. To draw a running horse with absolute realism, for instance, the artist would have to freeze the horse in a moment of the run, but because the motion is too quick for the eye to follow, the artist has no assurance that the running horse ever really does look like a particular pose. In 1878, Edward Muybridge addressed this problem, and the story behind his solution is a classic in the history of photography. Leland Stanford, a former governor of California, had bet a friend $25,000 that a horse at full gallop sometimes had all 4 feet off the ground. Since observation by the naked eye could not settle the bet one way or another, Stanford hired Muybridge, who was known as the photographer of landscapes, to photograph one of the governor's racehorses. Muybridge devised an ingenious method to take all of the pictures. He set up 24 cameras, each connected to a black thread stretched across the racecourse. As Stanford's mare ran down the track, she snapped the threads and triggered the camera shutters, and provided conclusively that a running horse does not gather all 4 feet off the ground at certain times. Stanford won the bet, and Muybridge went on to a more ambitious study of motion. In 1887, he published Animal Locomotion, his first important work, with 781 plates of people and animals in sequential motion. Animal locomotion allowed the world to see for the first time what positions living creatures really assume when they move. Film depends on a phenomenon called persistence of vision. The human brain retains a visual image for a fraction of a second longer than the eye actually records it. If this were not true, your visual perception of the world would be continually interrupted by blinks of your eyes. Instead, your brain carries over the visual image during the split second while your eyes are closed. Similarly, the brain carries over when still images are flashed before the eyes with only the briefest space between them. Motion picture film is not real motion, but a series of still images projected at a speed of 24 frames per second, which makes the action seem continuous. Planning what kinds of shot to film soon became an important aspect of gathering new raw material for film and movies. The shots were then edited and pieced together to create a storytelling sequence, which were then joined together to create a complete film. Editing became fundamental to the effect of filmmaking. One of the most influential early masters of editing was the Soviet-Russian filmmaker Sergei Egelston. Many filmmakers had concerned themselves with editing for clarity and continuity, making sure that shots followed each other smoothly and logically, so that the audience could follow the story. Egelston, however, became just as interested in the expressive possibilities of editing, including changing the rhythm of how quickly one shot succeeded another, breaking a single action down into several shots, and altering shots of different subjects so that the viewers could understand a symbolic connection between them. Many of Egelston's editing techniques can be seen in this work, Battleship Potemkin, in 1925 film that became an international hit. The movie tells the story of an uprising by sailors angered at how unjustly they have been treated by their ship's officers. In one scene, a sailor's anger boils over while he and some shipmates wash dishes. He raises a dish over his head and smashes it to bits on the counter. Egelston uses 10 shots for the action, editing them together in such rapid and violent rhythm that the brief moment stands apart from everything that's happened before. Although a steady stream of technological advances since Egelston's day has provided filmmakers with a sophisticated set of tools to work with, including digital recording, editing remains key to the telling of stories on film. Film and video. Artists have explored time storytelling materials in film. Artists have explored time and storytelling with the materials of film. For example, the sculptor Richard Serra also experimented with film as a medium for making art in the 1960s. Raised in the mass media saturation of the post-World War II era, Serra created Hand-Catching Lead, one of several films he created between 1968 and 1979, using 16mm film. Serra recorded himself trying to catch a falling piece of lead that another member of Serra's artist group, the musician John Cage, dropped from above. The film lasts over 3 minutes and has no sound. Only Serra's hand is visible in the center of the frame, dirty from the lead that he handles. The camera does not move or zoom in or out, and Serra's rejection of the typical elements of the medium that were familiar from pop culture, storytelling, narrative arc, characters, editing. Hand-catching lead begins and ends in the same way, lead falling or being caught or not and dropped out of the frame. Watching this banal scene, we are forced to pay attention to its subtle visual language. Lines, light, shape, movement. Like the non-figurative paintings that were made by the avant-garde artists of the same era, Serra's film challenges notions of art and its value and purpose. Film and video. Artists have explored film as a subject in their works. Like photography, film also became a subject for artists, not just as a medium. Cindy Sherman takes still photographs that draw from our shared knowledge of popular films. She calls these film stills, frames of motion picture film, and draws on familiar movie imagery using herself as a model. Yet none of Sherman's film stills are taken from films, nor do they tell a story over time. They are single images with characters that Sherman invents to represent types rather than individuals. The abandoned girlfriend, the jilted over, the pert secretary, the societal drunk, the party girl, the androgynous youth, and many others. There are categories that we bring to these images, for the photographs are called simply untitled. In Untitled, shown here, Sherman is a young woman standing alone on a dark road, a suitcase resting beside her. As we invent a story for the woman, we find that we have made assumptions about what kind of person she is, assumptions based in part on the stereotypes we have absorbed through the photographic images, films, and television shows and advertising that surrounds us. Film and video. Video's immediacy and lower cost made it more popular with artists. Just as radio had been invented to allow sound captured by a microphone to be transmitted over the air, so video was invented to do the same for moving images captured by a camera. A video camera converts a moving image into electronic signals, which can be recorded on a magnetic strip. The live or recorded signals are transmitted to a monitor, which decodes them and reconstitutes the image for display. The most famous monitor, of course, is the television. First demonstrated in the United States in 1939 in connection with the opening of the New York World's Fair, television sets became standard fixtures in American homes by about 1950. Artists appreciate how video could be recorded and then played back immediately on a monitor, eliminating the wait for film to be developed. The monitors that displayed the video, moreover, lent themselves well to exhibition and gallery spaces where new art was being shown. Artist Bruce Nauman was an early adopter. Nauman had previously experimented with the artistic potential of film, setting up a camera to record himself engaged in tasks such as bouncing a ball or tracing the perimeter of a square with his foot. Nauman had begun teaching at the San Francisco Art Institute, where as a new faculty member he found himself isolated. I had no support structure for my art then. There was no chance to talk about my artwork, he later recalled, and a lot of things I was doing didn't make sense, so I quit doing them. That left me alone in the studio. This in turn raised the fundamental question of what an artist does when left alone in the studio. My conclusion was that if I was an artist and I was in the studio, then whatever I was doing in the studio must be art. At this point, art became more an activity and less of a product. He recorded that activity using celluloid film, but soon turned to video. In Walk with Contrapposto, the subject of the work is Nauman's own body. Videotaped walking with his arms above his head as he walks, Nauman shifts his weight from one leg to another to mimic a sculptural pose invented by the ancient Greeks called contrapposto. The artist becomes a sculpture brought to life. He performs his walk in a narrow hallway he built for the work, and with a video camera, the video not only picks up his image, but also the sound of his footsteps. The video lasts 60 minutes, showing Nauman repeat his walk over and over, tiring as time passes. With time exaggerated by the slow movements and by the length of the video, we experience the image not just for its subject matter, the artist walking, but for its visual elements of light, line, space, texture, and shapes. The image is grainy, as early video had little sharpness, and it displays on a single monitor. Should we choose to remain in the gallery, we can watch the action over and over again as the video is looped. Film and video. Video has been part of installations, sometimes with other media. While Nauman's video uses one monitor, Beryl Courtois' text and commentary piece is a 5-channel video installation. It displays video on 5 monitors. Typical of early video art, text and commentary has a grainy black and white appearance. The work represents the artist weaving on a loom, with the recordings made from above at different distances. The 5 weavings Carat created while she filmed hanging nearby in the installation. Each video features sequences of views of yarn. Experiencing the installation takes time, as Carat carefully choreographed the moving images that appear on each screen. The artist's close views of the yarn turn the textiles she created into abstractions of line and pattern on the screen. These forms are then reconstituted as real objects by the weavings hanging along beside them. The combination of abstract views and real objects reinforces Carat's goal of creating a dialogue between old and new technologies. Weaving was one of the earliest arts, while video was one of the newest. Viewers looking back and forth between these two saw a small piece of history of human ingenuity. During the 1990s, digital video became available, along with technology that allowed the video to be stored digitally on a disk and then to be projected on a wall or onto some other surface. Video recorded and stored as data on a computer has offered artists new possibilities, including brighter, clearer images projected as large as the artist chooses. Walls and ceilings can be turned into moving images. Digital video therefore gives artists the chance to immerse their audience in movement, light, and sound. Icelandic artist Ragnar Kiltjarnarson, The Visitors, is nearly an hour-long 9-channel video installation with recordings of people making music inside the house. Each musician, including the artist himself, sings and plays alone in a room. The artist is in the bathtub, another musician in bed, and another in the library. The music brings them all together as they play along. A repetitive song simultaneously connects them to each other with headphones. Film and video. While analog video is grainy and lacks detail, digital video has sharp color and details. While analog video is grainy and lacks detail, digital video has sharp color and details. While analog video is grainy and lacks detail, digital video has sharp color and details, as we can see by contrasting Naumann's piece to this piece. New media and the Internet. Internet art is frequently interactive, reducing the artist's control over the final product. New media challenge the notion of art as a product to purchase and exhibit. With the development of the Internet, the World Wide Web, and browser applications capable of finding and displaying web pages, a computer became a gateway to a new kind of public space, one that was global in scope and potentially accessible to everyone. Not only could anyone find information on the internet, but also anyone could claim a presence on the internet by creating a website. Art that uses the internet as a medium is known as internet art, or more casually, net art. Since its beginning in the 1990s, net art has typically taken the form of emails, web pages, or software, a set of step-by-step instructions that can be executed by a computer. Net art is often interactive, allowing visitors to explore a space that has been created on the internet or to influence an image as it evolves on a computer monitor. Wafa Bayonel uses the camera and the internet to tell stories about himself and his interactions with the world. In 2010, Bayonel had a camera temporarily implanted on the back of his head. As he went about his daily activities, the camera captured one image every minute and transmitted it to the internet. The photographs depict his immediate past, those things he had left behind within the last few seconds. Unlike the digital photography of Loretta Lux, Bayonel exerted no control over the images. He did not choose the scene, nor did he crop the photograph. He did not review the photographs to choose the best ones. Instead, all the pictures taken by his camera were posted to the website. There, much like new media art, the artist defies the limits of the gallery exhibitions to reach out to viewers directly on their own personal devices. As we scroll through the photographs, we do not ever see the artist's body, just the traces of his movements through life. At the same time, we are anonymously voyeurs trailing behind his unseen presence. New media and internet art. Virtual reality works are immersive, computer-generated imageries viewed through stereoscopic headgear. Virtual reality immerses us into computer-generated imagery viewed through special stereoscopic headgear. The high-resolution displays in the VR headset present separate, wide-angle views for each eye and block out everything else. Unlike paintings or photographs that we look at from a fixed position outside of the work of art, usually in front, virtual reality places us inside the image and allows us to change our viewpoint. With each turn of the head, we see something new, and we can walk through and around the space as well. Although VR remains in its infancy, Museums have experimented with creating immersive experiences with works of art for audience both in the galleries and at home. Historians and preservationists have reconstructed digital models to preserve the memory of historic patrimony and give us access to otherwise inaccessible buildings and monuments. Artists have begun to explore its possibilities for making art and getting their art in front of a worldwide audience. In Reanimated, we can move around a simulated VR environment created by a Danish artist, Jakob Kudensk Steensen. The world we enter is a primordial forest, and we hear the mating call of an extinct kuawa bird from the Hawaiian Islands. The artist has used virtual reality to reanimate the bird, to bring it back to life from a recording of its call. He places the bird in a habitat entirely constructed on the computer based on the artist's research of the Hawaii's plants, animals, and insects. An interactive audio track not only narrates parts of the experience and plays gentle music over the sounds of the forest, but also responds to participants through their virtual reality headsets. Steensen's realistic treatment of the light, texture, color, and space is convincing. It is as if we are there, following the reanimated bird and reflecting on the environmental damage that caused its extinction. This concludes Chapter 9.